Shalom YouTube. Hey, it's Fletch. Welcome back. Today I want to talk to you about the tyranny of the minority. And the tyranny of minority is certainly not something that you're going to find modern day academia talking about or teaching unless it's a term of derision. You're certainly not going to find anyone in government at the national level talking about. And you're certainly not going to find the talking heads on TV talking about it again, unless it's a term of derision. And folks, I just got to tell you that I'm very concerned about the status of our country. I am almost 50 years old. I'm a veteran. I've been a police officer, and I'm going back to school. And I am appalled by what they are teaching people. And quite frankly, what people that are, I would say, probably you're about 20 when you start college, and so probably for the last 10 years at least. So the people that are 20 to 30, 35, something like that right now in our society, many of them have been, for lack of a better term, brainwashed into believing this idea or concept of socialism or communism light, as we will call it, and the social justice warrior fallacy. And sometimes I just have to laugh because, it's just ridiculous what they're teaching people. And, being an older person, many times in my classes, I am the sole dissenter, but more times than not, the voice of reason in these discussions, because these classes are designed in such a way that the professors ask questions, and these are leading questions in the Socratic method to, bring you to the logical conclusion that they want to bring you to. Well, the problem with that is that when they're only giving you one side of the information that you need to make an informed decision, well, obviously that becomes a problem. And the tyranny of the minority is one such subject. The Federalist Papers are letters that were written by the statesmen that founded our Constitution and our Bill of Rights. Many of us have this idea in our minds because we've seen the picture of all the statesmen in the same room hashing it out. Well, it never really happened. It was a many-year process. They wrote letters back and forth, corresponding. It took quite a while for them to come up with conditions that they would all agree with. And these letters that we have, which are part of the congressional record, part of the Library of Congress, are called the Federalist Papers and the Anti-Federalist Papers. So we really do know what these gentlemen were thinking about and what their intention was when the Constitution and the Bill of Rights was written. Much to the chagrin of many social justice warrior professors that are out there. And here's what I'm talking about. I've been in many settings when a student would say something very adverse about our founding fathers, even, borderline, rude, for lack of a better term, and the professor just let it go, won't say anything. However, if you quote the founding fathers as if they are good and wise people, they're very quick to point out their flaws. They're very quick to point out, some of the problems that were in the initial Constitution and Bill of Rights, things like that. And so obviously, there is an underlying current in our common society that these were bad people, and that we have to interpret the Constitution and or reinterpret it by what's important to us today, not by what the original intention was. Well, I would submit to you that the original intention is just as important, if not more important, than reinterpreting it, because reinterpreting it is a very, very dangerous thing. And while we're talking about the founding fathers of our country, I certainly don't do any, I guess what would the correct term be, hero worship of them. But at the same time, I don't think it's probably, such a good idea in a general sense to only be talking about them in terms of derision. Yes, they absolutely made mistakes, right? Like considering that our black brothers and sisters were only 3/5 human. And if you want a real mind blower, research that. Find out where that came from, that doctrine that our black brothers and sisters were only 3/5 human. But so, no, I don't do any hero worship of our founding fathers. And I know that they were very flawed people. I think some, or at least one of them, was actually a Muslim. Some of them were black, and we're not taught that either, by the way. And some of them, certainly weren't Christians. They were deists at best. But where else in the world are you going to find a society that is still as free as we have here in America? My allegiance is not to a country, a flag, or a nation. My allegiance is to my Creator. And as long as the nation or country that I'm living in, where they are headed and where they are coming from is in line with what my Creator taught me is important, then we're good. But the minute that changes, well, I'm going to not fear man, I'm going to fear my Creator. But getting back to the idea or the concept of the tyranny of the minority, and a lot of people don't realize that writing in a document in such a way that it's not too specific, because if it's too specific, lawyers can pick it apart. If it's too general, then attorneys and lawyers can pick it apart. So when they were writing the Constitutional Bill of Rights, they intentionally tried not to be too specific nor broad. But at the same time, they understood what was going to happen. James Madison is quoted as saying in one of his letters, "Enlightened statesmen will not always be at the helm." And how true that is today. The tyranny of the minority is in Federalist Paper 10. And in Federalist Paper 10, Madison is clearly, absolutely talking about how that we can't allow one segment or one small part of society to run roughshod over everyone else. Basically meaning that, yes, we don't want tyranny of the majority, right? That's why we're a constitutional republic and not a democracy, right? Is that because then you have tyranny of the majority or crowd or mob rule. Likewise, we can't have small special interest factions doing the same thing to our society. And as long as we're talking about the American form of government that we currently have and the status thereof, might I remind you yet again that we are not a democracy as the social justice warriors want to keep reminding us, ill-advisedly, of course. But a democracy is when two wolves and a lamb decide what's for dinner. A constitutional republic is when that sheep or lamb pulls out their glock and makes them reconsider. So here's what Madison said. "By a faction, I understand a number of citizens, whether amounting to a majority or a minority of the whole, who are united and actuated by some common impulse of passion or of interest adverse to the rights of the citizens or the permanent and aggregate interests of the community." Fellow citizen, fellow YouTuber, my question to you today is, what small, minute faction of our society today has common impulse of passion or interest that is adverse to the rights of the majority of the citizens of our country, and they are making permanent and aggregate changes to our society? And my second question is, what, if anything, are you going to do about it?